Getinline for the dopest girl show. The essence will be holding us down. Getinline.
Hey guys, welcome to the The Essence Show. Happy holidays. Welcome into the new year of 2019. Has it been good for you? It's been great for me. But I started getting like shivers and feeling kind of sick and coming down with this fever. But guess what? It's one of the best fevers I ever had because I have Fever Records in the house. Mr. Sal Abbatiello, hip-hop legend, godfather of hip-hop and freestyle. And I'm so excited to have him. This is my third time interviewing him. So, Sal Abbatiello, thank you for being here.
Because you pay me the big bucks. That's why I'm here.
How is everything?
Everything's great. Everything's going good.
Thank you for being here. How's your new year?
2019 started off with a bang. We sold out 2 shows at Westbury Disco, and we had a freestyle show, and we got a great lineup for the whole year lined up.
I've been thinking that disco should be the next big deal because there's a lot of people waiting for concerts and a place to go dance.
Well, me and my partner, Brian Rosenberg, we just, he'd been doing disco for a few years, and he just brought me on board to do it with him. We're doing Westbury, we're going to do Coney Island this year, we're going to do Brookhaven, we're going to do Wellmont, New Jersey. So we got a bunch of disco shows lined up.
You have a lot of good venues.
Yes.
A lot of audience participation, which makes the concert an experience. So there's a whole timeline to this gentleman here. I've known him for some time, and it's been a pleasure and an honor to be in his circle. As you know, he is the owner of the late Disco Fever, which was basically a home for hip-hop artists, unsigned maybe at the time, to come and perform in the Bronx. And that was a huge thing back in the 70s. Do you want to go through it? Before we hit Disco Fever, there's a lot more to you, though. So you want to give a little history of yourself?
Well, my family, we're Italian immigrants. We came here. My family came in the 20s and 30s. They settled in the Bronx, thank God, because I love the Bronx. I'm BX all the way. And they settled in on 149th and Washington Avenue and 3rd Avenue. Actually, my mother's family and my father's family, they didn't know each other, but they wound up coming here from Naples, and we settled here. And my grandfather opened a grocery store. My uncle was the butcher, and my other uncle was the shoemaker. And, my dad had a passion for music. And my uncle, he was a guitar player. And he was one of the most famous guitar players in New York. His name was Sonny Abbott. He had a TV show. He made some records on the pop charts. And my father, when he was in his 20s, he opened up a bar on the corner.
And you were a bartender, right?
Well, no, this is when I was a baby.
Oh, okay.
This is when I'm like 2 or 3 years
I
old.
jumped
you
age.
jumped 20 years ahead of time. And it was on 149th and 3rd Avenue. It was called Alley's East. And that's where I got my experience with Motown and R&B music. It was a predominantly black neighborhood.
Right.
And I grew up there, so.
Was it rough?
Back then it was really nice. It was a very family-orientated neighborhood, It was very versatile. It was white, Jewish, Italian, black, and I remember everybody getting along. I didn't even know prejudice till I got to school because most of my uncles were black.
Okay.
Uncle Bull, Uncle Jake, and, I used to hang out in the bar when I was young because my mother had to work there because, they didn't have enough money to pay everybody. So that's where I would be when I was 3, 4. So I would be out in the street on the fire hydrant with the kids.
Always around this.
Yeah.
Always around.
Basketball. I grew up in the parks playing ball and around music and, kind of stuck with me. And then we started opening up other clubs. My father opened up another club on 167 Jerome called Pepper and Salt. That's when I was 17. That's where I got my first job as a waiter.
Thanks to Dad.
And the first night, they stole all my hubcaps. I was like, hell no, I ain't working here no more.
Oh, wow. I
Yeah,
remember, I was young. I wasn't even born, but I remember that was a
69.
thing.
That was 1969.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's when the Knicks won the championship, the Mets. And
Special year.
Then we opened up a Italian lounge in the Bronx called Abbott's Golden Hour because our last name is Abbatiello.
Okay.
And my uncle was the guitar player there, and it was all the mafiosos were hanging out there. So that's where I started becoming a bartender and learning the business. 1970.
1970. Were you 19 then? Is that when you opened
I was 18.
And then you opened up the club with your dad, right? At 19?
Then I opened up the first disco in the Bronx, which was called the Playhouse.
The
And that was on Williamsbridge Road and Pelham Parkway. And I was the first one to bring a DJ into the neighborhood. All the bars at that time, all were bands. Chaz Palmolari used to play in my place. We were good friends. I used to play ball with him.
Handsome.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And great guy. And he could sing. And, He was he used to play the bongos. He had a great band. Good guy. And Joe Pesci played in my place. Frankie Vincent, the guy that was the Godfather in Sopranos. So all those guys came at it and they became big actors.
Wow, like they're legendary.
Yeah.
So tell me about this whole disco fever era. It's a very huge part of hip hop, and all the hip hop artists like look at you like the god, which you are to them because you took them in, right?
Well, like I said, luckily for me, I was in the neighborhood, and when my father, when I get off work uptown in the Bronx from my club, we'd all go downtown to the Pepper and Soul on 167, and we'd start hearing R&B music. So I told my dad, I said, why don't we open up a disco? Because disco was very popular Saturday night. Fever just came out, John Travolta, and the whole scene was blowing up, and the Tramps, and Tavares, and, Sister Sledge, and Archie Bell and the Drells, and I was just into that music. So we opened up a club called Disco Fever, after the movie. My mom made
I love it.
So we catered to a disco crowd. I brought in New Zeke, Carol Melvin and the Blue Notes, and then I started seeing at the end of the night, this guy named Sweet G would come in and DJ, and he'd start rhyming over the music. It was very intriguing because he was making the crowd all be involved with what he was doing. So that's what I liked about it. I said, wow, he's making the whole crowd be one person.
Right.
Throw your hands up in the air, say ho, and
being the hype man.
Yes,
and doing all
doing nursery rhymes, and this was at the end of the night. But that was the best part of the night when he would come on for that last hour. That's when the crowd was really into it, and it was a great source of meeting other people because everybody was doing the same thing at the same time, so it made you interact with people in the club and at the bar.
Right.
And I said, where can I find this music? He said, we gotta go in the streets, go to parks. I said, well, who's the most famous DJ? He said, this guy named Grandmaster Flash, Lovebug Starsky, Eddie Chiba, Cool Herc. So went into the park, and luckily the park I went into, Flash was playing there, and I met him and I told him that I was gonna make him famous, and he's like, yeah, some white boy's gonna make me famous in my neighborhood. So I said, yo, give me a Tuesday night. You need to be indoors. You can't be in the parks. You need some place where everybody could come see you on a weekly basis.
Right.
So I convinced him. He brought the Furious Five, and we had our first night, and 700 people showed up the first night. We weren't even ready. We had like 4 people working.
Wow. What was the capacity?
About 400 people.
So you've been breaking rules.
It was slammed. And the drinking age was only 18 then, so they're sneaking in at 16 and 17.
Wow.
And it was the summer, and back then there was all the gangs, the Latin Kings and the Nomad, Zulu Nation, so we had a lot of teenage gangs in there, and it was rough in the beginning. But,
was it hard for them to kind of accept you because you were from an Italian background in the Bronx, and
honestly, I didn't have that much of a problem because I grew up in that neighborhood, so I was very comfortable being there. And, they can know if you're comfortable in your skin or not, whether you phony or you're not phony, whether you belong or not.
For sure.
So, and plus I was no punk either, so, you had to keep your ground, and I was very confident what I did. But I ran the club well, and I treated them well, and I treated them with respect. And a lot of those kids weren't getting respect from nobody, police, lawyers, teachers, so they never had respect because, South Bronx was a time bomb back then. It was so much poverty and unemployment, and the buildings were burning down. Most kids, either their parents were working 2 jobs or 3 jobs and never saw them, or they were drug addicts. So they were unmonitored. And then I ran the club as, like more of a YMCA type of thing. It was more of a community type. Even though the place held 1,000 people, like I knew every customer, and that's where I got my respect, because I did things that they want, like, hey, I know you get high every day, but you can get high in the back, but you can't get high in the front.
Okay.
You gotta have some kind of respect.
Right,
Gotta have some kind of protocol.
Right.
So I always was teaching a lesson. I would do contests. I would do the dating game and give away tickets to Broadway plays so they could get a chance to go to a Broadway play and come back and tell people about it. I would do Name That Tune where they could come and win some money, or the bikini contest, or the talent show, the gong show. We gave away $2,000 prize in 1979, 78. So my thing was, how do I get to these kids? Sports, music, and education. So I started the Entertainers Basketball League in 1979, which I played in myself, and I was the first MVP. And that's the league that Fat Joe and Puffy and Jay-Z, all these years, is still going on at the Rutgers, 38 years later.
Yes, I hear that they kind of helped sponsor the event.
Yeah. So it's still going on 38 years later. The one that I started 79, me, Mr. Magic,
Look at
and
that.
Greg McManus, who both of them passed away, from Disco 4. And our first game was in 1979 at Mount Morris Park. 3,000 people showed up. And I hit the shot at the buzzer to win the game, so they carried me around, and it was a great moment in my life. And that's where I got my respect, with hitting the shot at the buzzer.
People always, you have like this charisma that people always want to just be around you. And it's just unspoken.
Because I drink a lot, too.
Is it? Yeah. Is it because of that? Salud. So this was like a home for, who was your first performer at Disco Fever? Do you recall?
Well, the first performer was Disco. So it was the Joneses, Musique.
Okay,
and
so
Harold
for the
Hogan.
hip hop.
Hip hop, the DJ Grandmaster Flash came in on a Tuesday. I also had found Cool Herc, who was very well known in the neighborhood in Clark Kent. So they were my first house DJs. And then we moved on to, as the club started turning more into hip hop, as we were, creating this clientele, and where could we go hear this music on a nightly basis? So we started doing Wednesday, Hollywood, Thursday, Junebug, Sweet G.
It's like DJ designated
Eddie
nights.
Chiba, Love Bug Starsky,
Beautiful.
Star Child. So then it became hip hop 7 nights a week, and it became like the hip hop capital of the world. I mean, we were in People Magazine, Rolling Stone Magazine, Time Magazine, wherever people came from another country, TV, there was always a camera in there. Where could we see this music? And that's what happened. And, then they made the movie Crush Groove.
Yes.
We did the first rap show at Radio City in 1983, which is in that movie Crush Groove, where the Fat Boys went.
Yes.
They got discovered there. Run DMC did his first show there, and Doug the Beastie Boys did their first show there. And,
it's just so much
it was an amazing
history.
story. Curtis Blow and LL and Dougie. It was an unbelievable ride. It'll never happen again in the history.
No, it won't. And
nightclubs.
it's very sad and bittersweet at the same time. And I
Yeah.
couldn't imagine the way you can relive these things.
Yes, we did a doc about 7-8 years ago called White Lines in the Fever. And it was about my DJ Junebug, who was probably one of the best DJs back in that era, to where rappers could come in and freelance while he was mixing back and forth. He was unbelievable. And he had such a flow with him that they could rap fluently, because we used to have mic night,
Okay.
on Tuesday night. And each rapper would get online, Curtis Blow and Kool Mo D and all the guys, Sugar Hill, and they would all take turns rapping on the mic, and he was the DJ. And then he, being in that neighborhood, everybody needs to make money. Things were terrible, and everybody sold drugs. That was the only way to make money back then. Was either be a stick-up kid, sell drugs.
Wow.
So he started selling drugs at the DJ booth, and before you knew it, he started becoming a big drug dealer. And long story short, he got killed. Over that. Him and my barmaid, my bartender.
Oh, wow.
Which was one of the young kids that I mentored and gave her a job. She was homeless. I brought her indoors, and so we made a documentary about it, and it won first place at Tribeca Film Festival.
Yes, you're just a winner.
Yeah, it was in the shorts.
And what
Very
makes
exciting.
you so special too is that you brought in a lot of the employees that were in the streets that needed a place to kind of be productive at. It wasn't like you hired employees, which made you one of the highest employers in the Bronx, right?
Oh, at that time, I was about 180, 190 people working for me. And it was all in a 10-block radius. We had Pepper and Salt, Sugar and Spice, Skate Fever I opened up for the kids.
Right. Explain Skate
Disco
Fever a little
Fever.
bit. It was a 2-level.
It was 2 floors. And what I did was, so the parents could come in and watch their kids and still party, we made a disco underground.
I love
And we had a
it.
sliding pond where the parent, you could go downstairs, and the sliding pond, you could come up with the elevator.
I love that.
So we had the potato sacks, and you would fly, and you would wind up in the disco.
That is so much fun.
And I had cameras upstairs on all the skating, so the parents were downstairs drinking but watching their kids skate. So they were still monitoring their kids while they were partying downstairs.
Oh, I would have loved to grow up in that time.
It was a great era, and the music was fantastic. And hip hop, look what it turned into, the biggest music in the world.
Yeah, it is, when they doubted it for so long. And then
I was ridiculed when I first did it. I mean, even the black community was totally against it, because they were like Motown, they were into singing, they were into the Temptations and Frank Sinatra and Tony Bennett and Shirley Bassey and Ella Fitzgerald, and they're like,
What
the
is
hell is
this?
this? They're spitting in the mic, and They're using other people's music. They're scratching over the record. So the older black generation didn't understand it. Luckily, I did, and I foreseen it as the future.
Yeah.
And
And look at what it is now.
Unbelievable.
It's like the number
I'm
one
so
genre.
proud.
Yeah, besides country.
Yeah.
So then that brings you into 1982 when you started to produce one of your first singles, right? Games People Play, which was produced by Jelly Bean Benitez and Curtis Blow.
Yep. And Russell Simmons.
And Russell Simmons, look at that. And this is all in the 80s. And then it started going into 1985, and there was a movie that came out that a lot of you hip-hop lovers will know. Crush Groove?
Crush Groove, yeah.
Tell me a little about that.
Well, after the popularity, the club's open now 8 years, and we're doing hip-hop 7 nights a week. So you're talking like 3,000 nights of hip-hop in a row, which, again, like I said, there'd be like 20, 30 recording artists in the club at the same time. And like it can never, ever be created again because we discovered a genre in the street. This was a movement of young black teenagers and urban kids in the South Bronx, and it trickled into Queens and the whole country and the West Coast. So when it came into Hollywood, it was recreating that scene of us bringing it in from the street indoors. And it was phenomenal, having Hollywood come there in a real movie, Warner Brothers. The only problem we had with the movie was when it came out, all of the movie theaters were so packed that they thought that it was going to bring violence to the movies, but it wasn't. It was a G-rated movie. There was no violence in the movie at all. There was no cursing, nothing. And they started pulling it out of the theaters without even knowing.
Really?
Yeah, and it was a shame because it was ready to blow up. But now it's a classic. It's
a classic.
HBO.
It was on not so long ago.
Yeah, the other night.
And you make a little cameo. Yes, it's always good to see you there,
I got
sit
my
at the
little
desk.
few cameos in there.
I love it. So the Fever closed after that movie premiere, correct?
Actually, the premiere of the movie was the night the Fever got closed because of no cabaret license.
Okay. And then that brings you into late 85, and that's when you open the Devil's Nest. Another interesting name. I love the names, by the way. The club names back in the day were so much fun. I think I'd be in the clubs every night myself. Now I understand the whole 70s and 80s era. And that's when you started to... There was this Latin hip-hop era kind of going on, and that caught your attention, right?
Well, thank God being involved in the hip-hop with the Fever, once the Fever got closed up, we had a Latin place on Tremont and Webster. It was called Voices.
Okay.
And Ralph Mercado, legendary Ralph Mercado, who discovered Tito Puente, La India, Mark Anthony, all those guys, RMM.
Yep.
Till today, I respected him so much.
He was great.
I always looked up to him.
I interned with him years ago, yes. As royalty department. It was stressful as hell. I don't do
his son's still banging out Ralphie Jr.
Yes.
Fantastic DJ,
yes,
too.
Yes, he is.
So his dad was our promoter at the club, and we were doing 1,000 people a week. He was packing it. That's when they first started doing the bottles and the VIP and the tables, and all the Latin bands with it. Ralph was bringing everybody in, and then Ralph got the Palladium in the city.
Got it.
And he left the Voices, which was our club. We went from 1,000 people to 0.
Wow.
So now I'm sitting in the park across the street, and I'm watching these Puerto Rican kids break dance, and they're like maybe 15, 16 years old. And there was a DJ there, just like when I found Flash. And I'm watching them break dancing, and then I just went, oh, damn, Latin hip-hop. Latin hip-hop. I went over to the DJ. Who is it? Little Louis Vega. So I go to my dad. I said, yo, that's it. I found it. Latin hip-hop. He's like, yo, get out of here with this hip-hop shit. I ain't doing it no more. They just closed up the Fever.
Which right now we know it as freestyle.
Yes. Okay. So what we did was I turned the club into just catering. Remember, there was no name. I didn't know what the music was.
Right.
But in the meantime, the year before, a young lady named Niobe from the Bronx had won the Fever's Gong Show. And the prize was a recording contract. So we were making a record for her, and this young producer named Andy Panda, also Puerto Rican,
I remember him.
and Naomi was Cuban. I got them together to make this record that he wrote and produced called "Please Don't Go," and it reminded me of like a Latin disco record. So I kind of thought like, wow, this might be the new movement, a little Latin flavor, because the Latin community was starting to really blow up in the Bronx. They were moving in, and they were becoming store owners and stuff, and they were going to the schools. So all the George Lamonts, the TKAs, the Indias, all these people, they're all teenagers now. They're all in high school. So there's this whole movement getting ready to blow up.
Yeah.
And luckily, I make this first record called Please Don't Go. and it takes off, and the movement blows up. And when I opened up the club, that's when they all got together, the Latin Rascals and all the producers and the cover girls, and they got together and they all started networking. Sapphire, Judy Torres, Cynthia, and then they all started producing and meeting each other, and Mickey Garcia, and
there
it blew up.
Then it was.
It didn't get the name freestyle till many years later. We didn't. It wasn't. It was Latin hip hop back then.
So maybe
wasn't
like
called
in the
freestyle.
90s it became freestyle?
Yeah, we had a movement. We took a
Yeah.
movement out of the street, and it was second generation Latinos, and they found their place in this country and in the
Yeah,
Bronx.
you became like one of the hottest and largest promoters in New York City.
Yeah,
Roseland,
yeah,
Palladium.
Yeah, then I started going to promoting and
Yeah.
bringing the freestyle acts there, and I was putting 10, 15 acts in at the same time. 4,000 people showing up, 5,000 people.
You just like have that touch.
Yeah,
Even till this day, if you go to a freestyle concert, it's so amazing. I've been to, well, I'm usually backstage doing my interviews bothering him. But my first time when I went with my crew as a viewer, it took me through my whole childhood, which was amazing. I cried, I jumped, I danced. It was amazing. So the experience that it brings here to the Bronx at Lehman College is phenomenal. And you're into your 13th year, which we'll get to in a second. But in 1987, that's when you went more into producing, and then you started with the whole Fever Records era,
Yeah.
right? And the first group that you did was the female trio of Cover Girls, the original Cover Girls.
Yes, it's in,
And then became TKA and Coral
Yeah.
and Sapphire.
and
Judy
La India used to
Torres.
be the
La
original
India was-
TKA.
Right.
Her
She
first show was at the Devil's Nest.
Yes, and I wish that she can go. I wish she would go back to house music because her voice just
Oh man,
over a house
she had some
beat.
great records.
Amazing. Okay, so it went from the hip hop freestyle disco. How did we get into the stage hosting? You know, you host your own shows and concerts and stuff. How did that work?
Well,
That came about.
freestyle started to fall off in like 93, 94. The last good records was like Lizette Melendez and Corina. Those are the last really impact records, and
Yes.
maybe Giggles. And then after that, it kind of fell off. And what happened was they were all still young artists. They were still only in their 20s, and now like the scene is dead. It's over. Nobody wants to play the music no more. You know, the radios ain't playing the music anymore. They went hip hop, and
Yeah.
they all had to start looking for jobs. And so from 94 to 2000 was a dead period for them, you know. And even for myself, I had to rediscover myself, reinvent myself. I started doing clubs like more hip hop clubs like Downtime and Essos. I went to Manhattan, and I was very successful, but I had to switch to hip hop because they started booing the freestyle artists. You know, yeah, it was tough for me to see them go through that. And then in the year 2000, you know, I wanted to have my 20-year anniversary party. So I get all my original people together, and I go to Club Exit, which held like 5,000
Oh my God, I
people.
remember. That place was huge.
And so everybody's laughing at me. I'm going to have my 20-year reunion. All the young new promoters are like, yo, Sal, you're 45, 48 years old. Get over it. You're over the hill. This music's over the hill.
It's just the beginning.
They're dead. And they were true. It was true. But I was out there. I must have handed out 50,000 flyers myself in the street. You know, I had crews everywhere.
Back to square one.
Hell yeah. You know, calling.
I
you know,
love that.
Texting and not texting, the beepers and, you know, cold calling and everything. People in the office. And long story short, the owner thought nobody was going to show up, so he barely opened up half the place, and about 4,000 people showed up. And that's when every promoter in New York was like, yo, what the hell? And then I went to the Copa. The Copa opened up again on 34th Street. And that was the beginning when everybody took notice and said, wow, freestyle, the artists are not viable by themselves, but when you put them together,
Right.
10, 12 at a time, they become one big star.
Got it.
And then so that I realized what to do, just make them all do their hit records. And so you'd go to the shows and just hear 30 hit records in a row.
Yeah.
Not some new, nobody
Yeah.
was allowed to do new
Yeah.
records, just do the classics.
Yeah.
And that's what took off. And then Adam Torres approached me about doing the first concert in Connecticut at the Palace.
Yes.
We sold out like that. And then I went to the Copa on my birthday party. We did 4,500 people in the Copacabana on Thanksgiving Eve.
The original Copa?
Yeah. No, not the original, the one on 34th.
Okay.
The original was on 60th.
Right.
And that was it. And then
The rest is
started
almost
doing
history.
concerts. And
And now you
selling
host,
out arenas.
Now you hosting your own at Lehman.
So
and
how the hosting happened was,
keep on.
how the hosting happened was, I was at the Copa, and the host got drunk, and there was nobody to announce the next act. And I never got on stage. I never promoted myself. I never really put my name on a fly. It was always just fever.
Maybe I need to get you drunk so I can take over.
Hell yeah.
I always tease him with that.
So I got up on stage, and that's how it started. And I started getting a little more confident. Then I started noticing that, people started to ask to take a picture and how you doing and could you sign my album? And so I started doing it more, and I started getting good at it. And then as I got more into it, I started doing routines and wearing outfits.
Yeah, you do a whole dance.
And then I said, then I realized what to do with the concerts, because our crowd now was getting 40s, and they were becoming like a hard ticket crowd. But they were party people. They came from the club scene. So I try to create my concerts and make it like a club party. So we do comedy, we do skits, and we just don't run a straight concert.
No.
We have the groups interact with each other, and the outfits we wear, and we do all these themes, Halloween themes and stuff, and the Rat Pack, and my partner Brian came up with all these ideas too, and that was it. And our concert, we don't even put the groups up like Lehman. We just put up when it's gonna be, and it sells 400 or 500 tickets.
Yeah, it's.
I don't even know who's gonna perform.
Yeah, it's like something that everyone looks forward to in the Bronx or tri-state. Like I said, it's an experience. But before we head on out of here, because time goes so fast and there's so much that me and Sal could talk about, personal, industry, we can keep going. Please talk to us really quickly about your foundations, because it's very important to you and it's important to us as well.
Well, like I said, I always give back. Back in the day when I had the fever, we rebuilt a park. We built a basketball court, and at McCombs on 172nd.
Yes.
And then I started getting into, one of my best friends, Vivian Rivera, and one of my foster kid, Erica Roman. Both of them passed away. So I started a foundation in their names. And Erica was a foster child. Vivian died of breast cancer. So that's what we do. We support foster children. We built a recording studio at the Bronx Children's Fund over there, so kids could go in and learn how to be producers and writers and stuff.
Nice.
We also do Orchard Beach, the cancer walk there, 15,000 people every year.
Amazing, and the fundraising money is amazing.
And we raise money every year that goes directly to the American Cancer Society. And if there's anybody in the neighborhood that has a problem or a family that needs, they come to us and we'll do a fundraiser for them and try to help them with their bills and stuff.
Nice, and that's very crucial in our community. Also, I want to congratulate you on the Hip Hop Museum that's taking place.
Yes.
I know you're very excited about
Bronx,
that.
yeah,
Yes, I can't wait for that. Also, we have an upcoming concert here at Lehman College. We want to promote a little bit.
March 16th. We're going to be here at Lehman for a 13th year. It's
Get
always
your
a
tickets.
sellout. It's probably our favorite one, even the artist. It's very special to all of us.
Yeah.
Everybody fights to be on it.
I fight to get backstage. I'll be there. I love it. I love being there. The spirit, and it's like we're like freestyle family. Like everybody just doesn't change. It's like home.
And I break the rules. I let everybody come backstage. It's packed. It's over.
I know.
The fire department's knocking on the door.
Tom is always like, get away from the stage. I also want to congratulate you on becoming a granddaddy. She's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
Real quickly, one word to describe grandfatherhood.
Oh, off the hook, because you get to give back. You hold them for 3 hours and you say, bye, Felicia. I hear, I'm out of here, bye.
Sal, I love speaking to you, and thank you so much for being here and our third time sitting together, hopefully many more. Do you want to give out your social media where they can find you?
Well, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to tell you an exclusive that
you better
nobody
get in
knows.
line.
I just made a deal with Rock Nation to do a document series on my life story.
Yes!
So we just signed a deal last month, and they're going to represent me as an agent. And we're going to go shopping it around to various studios.
You know, that was one of my questions here. When
Yeah.
are we going to see something just on you? I'm so happy for you. My heart hurts right now.
Sign the deal. Hopefully it goes through and we can get something going.
Con Dios.
Hello.
From here to God's ears.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, my
You're
love.
welcome, baby.
Love you.
And good luck on your first show. This is number one.
Thank you. Thank you guys for tuning in. You can reach me here on the D Essence Show. And you can also follow me on Miss D Essence 1 on Instagram. And if not, you better get in line. Good night, y'all.
Get in line.